Thank you for staying with us. Time now to get informed. AM News time. And in our first story, President Akufo-Addo has charged the newly elected leadership of the Pan-African Youth Union to use their mandate to insist on democratic governance in all African countries and further fight against military interventions and takeovers. He says there are very serious issues confronting the African continent, and it is only through the promotion of democratic responsibility that the continent's challenges can be dealt with. President Akufo-Addo also emphasized that coups have not given Africa the progress it deserves.
I think the issues before our continent are well known. How to engender the peace and security of our continent, promote good governance in Africa, and of course, as a result, accelerate the development of our economies, and improve the living standards of our people. These are the main issues before us in our generation. And you've been given a very important role in realizing this vision of Africa's future. We have to insist on good governance. We have to insist on democratic responsibility on our continent. We have seen what the eras of coups and military intervention did on our continent in our various nations. They didn't bring us the progress that we would have had. And so to preach the lessons, the virtues of democratic engagement, to preach the virtues of Africa being responsible and capable of promoting and defending its own interests, this is a very heavy responsibility that has been imposed on you. But I hear you, and I can discern from what I've heard from both of you, you in French and him in English, that you're up to the task. You'll have the support of this government and myself personally in whatever you're doing, so long as it is geared towards these goals.
Now, neonatal mortality rates, according to the Ahafo Regional Health Director, Dr. Kwabena Boateng-Boakye, has improved from 7.7 to 6 per 1,000 live births, which is within the regional target of 8 per 1,000 live births. Speaking at the 2021 Annual Health Sector Performance Review meeting, Dr. Boateng-Boakye said despite the many challenges affecting healthcare delivery, his outfit is striving to improve on their overall holistic assessment score of 4.1 out of 5, with improved and specialized personnel. Correspondent Precious Semivo has more from Goss.
The two-day 2021 Annual Health Sector Review meeting on the theme Essential Services Continuity amid the COVID-19 pandemic, leveraging on public health and clinical care synergy, took place in Gosso for stakeholders to reflect on the ways of improving healthcare delivery. The Ahafo region recorded an overall score of 4.1 out of 5, an improvement over the 2020 score of 3.8 in the holistic assessment exercise. Some of the areas that saw improvement include family planning acceptance rate, the proportion of mothers who made at least 4 ANC visits, and neonatal mortality rate. Dr. Kwabena Boateng-Boakye, the Regional Health Director, said despite the challenges, it will get better with dedicated and specialized personnel.
We have a team for all the districts. We audit the deaths, and the regional has an oversight team that does the audit, so that the recommendations that have been agreed upon by the various district audit teams see the light of day. In fact, I think just recently that we had the deputy clinical care, these are obstetrician gynecologists. So 2 years ago, we had the slogan Zero Tolerance for Maternal Deaths, and we lined the regional maternal child and newborn task force, which really became less functional. But right from this year with this presence, we are going to reactivate it. So what I mean is that we don't want to see a mother die. When it comes to the newborn deaths, for 2020, I think we have 7.7 per 1,000 live deaths. And for 2021, 6 per 1,000 live deaths, which is an improvement on it. But we believe that when we get more human resources, we can even do better.
The region has recorded 2 COVID-19 deaths in 2022, with no active case, but residents are being urged to get vaccinated.
From January to the end of February 2022, this year, the region has reported a total of 27 cases in 2 years. As of today, the region has no active case, which has been the status quo since the 2nd of February 2022. So as of the end of February, about 45% of our eligible population of about 395,000, including pregnant women, have received at least one dose, and about 27% have been fully vaccinated. The vaccines are safe and effective-free. There are managing challenges of field pockets of vaccine hesitancy.
Ghana Health Service Council member William Frimpong Bonsu said the council would soon implement policies to ensure fair and equitable distribution of personnel.
And very soon we are going to implement a policy on that. I mean, in terms of transfer and other things, because the distribution is being concentrated. And it came to our attention that there's a health facility in Kumasi. They need only about 20 midwives, but they have about 110. So everybody was accepted within Eastern Greater Accra. So there's going to be a policy right from the training point that if you go to the training center, then you know that I'm going to work in this region.
Chief of Intotroso, Berima Treko Ampem II, assured the Health Directorate the Regional House of Chiefs would discuss their challenges for effective healthcare delivery. Precious Semevo, Joy News, Goso.
Now, in its 15-year academic journey, the Zwarungu Nursing and Midwifery Training College in the Bolgatanga East District of the Upper East Region has achieved some milestones, including a 100% pass record in the last released Nursing and Midwifery Council exams. However, the principal of the college, Michael Mantemia, says the institution needs a standard school library and a standard skills laboratory, among other things, to help incoming students to improve on the success story. He was speaking at the 2022 matriculation for fresh students of the school, from where correspondent Albert Sori reports.
The Zwarungu Nursing and Midwifery Training College was established in the year 2007. The college, which started with just 50 students, has over the years produced hundreds of clinical and preventive nurse assistants for the country. The principal of the college, Michael Mantamia, believes that the college in its 15-year journey has chalked many successes, including the introduction of 2 more courses of study and a 100% pass record in the last Nursing and Midwifery Council examination results released in the year 2020. He is, however, unhappy about the slow pace of infrastructural development at the institution. The principal was speaking at the 2022 matriculation for fresh students of the Zwarungu Nursing and Midwifery Training College.
The hard-working staffs don't have any accommodation on campus. They struggle to rent outside, which is affecting both their morale as well as the management of the college. The college needs standard library, standard ICT laboratory, and standard skills lab. We also urgently need a student hostel. We also welcome organizations or individuals who may want to enter into a public-private partnership arrangement to kindly alert us for engagement.
Let's talk security now, and a stakeholder engagement has been held on the state of the security of the northern region. The engagement was also to offer the police the opportunity to brief the stakeholders on investigations conducted on some of the incidents that have triggered violence in the region, including the recent Lamashegu shooting incident. There's more in this report put together by Martina Bugri.
Presenting the various reports of investigations, the Northern Regional Police Commander, COP Timothy Yosabonga, said investigations have reached various stages. He said the Inspector General of Police sent a powerful investigative team to come and investigate the criminal aspect of the Lamashegu incident. He added that the team of ballistic experts and crime scene experts were also dispatched to the scene. COP Bonga noted that professional standard officers were also sent to investigate the professional conduct of the officers.
On the Lamashegu police station and all the shootings, it came out that we have lost somebody. Life has been lost. So if life has been lost, then it is something that will not be taken lightly. The IGP also sent that very day
professional standards officials or officers to investigate the professional conduct aspect, which will result in the departmental disciplinary action of the officers who were involved. So that is where we are now. Our overall policy. Everything is almost done. It's just there with the final seal of their service and file.
Let's talk health and food safety now. And Bacillus cereus, a food poisoning causing germ, can survive boiling. Earlier reports suggested the germ could be found in cooked, chilled vegetable products, but not street vended foods. However, a new study by the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology has detected the germ in street vended cooked foods such as fufu and fried rice. JoyNews medical reporter Dr. Netta Pasram reports.
The germ, Bacillus cereus, reproduces by producing spores, which are shelled like eggs and activated by the application of heat through cooking. Now, sources of these spores are dust and spices. Bacillus cereus also produces toxins in food. Now, these toxins are not destroyed by heat.
Rather, they are activated by heat. So when we cook some foods like granule soup, you see that after cooking and leaving it for some time, it becomes foamy. It's as a result of some of these Bacillus cereus. You think you have cooked the food, but then you have actually activated the spores of Bacillus cereus. So when they are found in the food, it becomes a problem for us.
The scientists found levels of Bacillus cereus above the WHO limit. This suggests that people could be suffering the adverse effects of Bacillus cereus.
When they multiply and they become too much, they produce what we call toxins. These toxins in the food can, when you heat it, you will not destroy the toxins. They become like chemicals in the food. So you can heat the food and kill all the Bacillus cereus in the food, but still these toxins will be present. So anybody consuming that food can even die instantly after consuming food with high levels of these toxins present in the food. Hygiene. And now it's becoming increasingly difficult for hygiene to be observed. It is not an easy thing. You should try and reduce excessive handling. If we can use tongs at certain points in handling the food, let us use the tongs rather than using our bare fingers, that which we have used to touch our hair, pick our nose, cough into our hands, etc., using the same hands to handle food. Even try to use this to give change or change monies for people. Still use that same hand to handle the foods that we serve. It's not hygienic enough.
The researchers recommend that the storage of fufu pounding equipment, that is, the mortar and the pestle, after cleaning and drying, is to cover with a plastic film before reuse. Additionally, they suggest that cooked rice should not be kept at room temperature for long periods before consumption. Reporting for Joy News, I am Dr. Netta Pasram.
Now, spoken in the central region, it is one of the oldest dialects in Ghana, and yet many of its natives cannot read, speak, or write it. Natives of Senya Breku fear theirs may be the last generation that would be able to speak Senya as the dialect continues to fade away. For the fourth of our series of stories celebrating Ghana Month, Joy News Justice Beidou traveled to Senya Breku to find out more about the Senya dialect.
I'm pretty sure you know about this song, but if you ask anybody what is the meaning of this song, they don't know, and it looks like an account song, but it's a Senya song that means vulture. If you want to sleep, sleep. Sende diwa de de de, sende diwa. Sende diwa de de de, sende diwa de de de, sende diwa de de de, sende diwa. Sende diwa de. If you want to sleep, sleep. Now, this tells you that our culture as Guans has been dominated by accounts.
Abeku Okai is a pastor. He calls himself a man of the people. The people are the people of Senya Breku.
When I was a kid, somebody was teasing, I live at Malam. Somebody was teasing us, my uncles, my mom, that your language is not written, your language is not a language. I was in P6 then. I felt so bad and humiliated. So I had it in my mind that I have to see my language in print. How to read and write Senya, yes, chapter 2, Introduction to Senya numerals, and we call it Nkare. So
he has spent his entire life trying to develop alphabet and numerals for the Senya language so young people can learn. Ama Awochiba lives in the seaside town of Senya Breku in the central region. She has lived here her entire life. Ajua, her little baby, is 4 years. Like herself, her husband speaks Senya language.
Our generation, we don't want to teach our children the language. We only teach them English. They speak only Chi and not Senya. So the children have been cut off, and it's an error to cut children away from their language.
The Senya language is on the brink. The people who are supposed to speak it are those in the areas like Kaswa and Senya Breku itself, just on the outskirts of southwestern Accra.
The Senya Breku language is an ancient language, very ancient. And when I say ancient, what I mean is that the people of Senya Breku are Guans. They are the aboriginals of this nation, Ghana. And we all know that the Guans were the first who settled here. Our language is closer, the Senya language is closer to Gonja, closer to Winneba, maybe closest to Winneba, and then Awutu, Latte, Tripon.
My dream is to have my child speak Senya. If in future she travels, I want her to go with our language. If she returns, she should be able to connect with her people. I don't want her to get lost.
Children like baby Achua will be very lucky to still hear people speak the Senya language by the time they are adults. For many like Abeku, this is a disaster they are working to avert. Justice Beidu, JoyNews, Senya Breku.
That will be all for the AM News, but we have more coming your way as we hit the papers for the news review. Stay tuned as we bring you talk about single spine, as we bring you talk about Ukraine and more. Do stay. We'll be right back. Welcome aboard the News Review, and I'm not the only one here. I'm doing this together with Comrade Granting.
Hey, where's the Comrade?
Manuel Granting. Usuru. Are you Afia?
Yeah, I'm not Afia. I just want you to tell viewers a very good morning to all of you. Where you join us from. Yesterday was your birthday, Ben. Belated happy birthday.
It was yesterday.
Yes, yesterday I was not on the show. Today I am on. And
they're about to do that.
How was it? How was your birthday? I don't know.
Oh, the birthday was good. So here's one thing. I always keep my birthdays quiet.
Okay.
I like to keep it a day that is reflective. I went to church, requested mass, took Holy Communion, got blessed by a priest I've known since my undergrad days. Got a lot of cheer from friends. I am now going to start responding to messages on social media, Facebook, WhatsApp. I had a foot massage.
Wow.
And, a few other.
Okay. You lived a life. And then where did you end? Where did you end?
Where did I end?
Where did you sleep?
I slept at home. Where else would I sleep?
We have incontrovertible evidence pointing to the fact that you didn't sleep at home. We didn't sleep at home.
So, Dr. Akufo Dampare, this is one instance of publication of false news. And for this propaganda, I'm putting it out there live. In fact, you make a video no messenger amount this very morning. Ubede mama.
But I mean,
sleep inside.
A belated happy birthday to you. I mean,
thank you, bro.
Great guy. Yeah, Ben.
And I saw your post yesterday. I'm going to respond to all of them today.
Ben is, as always, a great guy. Just you'd have to stick to sleeping at home on your birthday.
The Daily Graphic newspaper this morning. But even before we get in there, I'm sure you've been following events unfolding in Ukraine, and it breaks my heart. Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, has said that Russia would have to foot the bill of paying for every street, every building that has been taken down and all of that, which makes some practical sense in terms of how wars are dealt with. Putin says he's trying to demilitarize and denazify, and those are terms I can't even relate to Ukraine. But what really, they've been trying to take the town of Mariupol and all of that. The Russians are making some inroads. I mean, you cannot take that away from them. The sanctions are biting Russia as well. Now, even the latest, the Paralympics, where the committee made a U-turn, allowing Russia and Belarus in the first instance, and now saying they can't. I don't know how Russian athletes across the spectrum, from football to chess to fencing to anything, whatever it is.
Anything at all.
I don't know how they're going to feel in Russia.
At least at this point, we know that there are certain talks that are ongoing.
Right.
Talks which, at least at the onset and sometime last week, were not having. This time around, you're having some overtures being made and some attempts to, compromise, no matter how little it will be. And for me, that is a silver lining in all of the conversation. And so, even though Putin is insisting, holding his ground and saying that, we're still going to do it, we're still going to demilitarize.
The war is not going as planned. I mean,
exactly,
they are making inroads, but the war is not going as planned. I was listening to Petroshenko, former Ukrainian president, this morning on the BBC, and he was saying that, look, never, if you're going into any negotiations with Vladimir Putin, never trust Putin. Never take his words for it. This is a former KGB operative, if you know about Putin, who became, leader of Russia and all of that. But for me, it's just about the tone this military or this martial endeavor has taken. Again, now that nuclear power plant that was attacked. You see, in war, there are certain do's and don'ts, even when you are fighting. And when you attack a nuclear reactor, if you want to shut down electricity, you know what to go for, the transformers and everything. When you hit a nuclear reactor, it means you have intent to see some nuclear meltdown.
Exactly.
And you know how the effects of these, not just then, it could go into many months and years and decades. So I think it's becoming very ugly. And, the human rights organizations, the UN, I think, has also sent investigative teams in there. Russia, I don't know, but in years to come, they could still be bearing the brunt of Putin's actions.
To bring the conversation home, for instance, what are the direct implications in the now for, foreign nationals, like our own colleagues here from Ghana, who are
and that was the final bit I was about to get to.
Indeed, who are still, even at this point, and we've heard the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister, Amprechum, say that some of them are still hiding, even as of now that we're talking on the show.
Some of them actually don't want to come back
in a bunker. And I was going
to Ghana.
just going to go to that. I mean, hiding in a bunker, of course, there are two sets of people. Those who are hiding because of the fear of, being caught up in a crossfire.
Right.
And then those who are deliberately...
I mean, there are those who missed out on maybe moving at the right time. And so, yes, they have to, protect themselves and all of that. But there are those who are also, saying...
Deliberately, they're actually evading, being found finding ways and means of...
And they've been told.
Not I mean, you are there.
Manuel, you are there. There's a window.
Risk.
If you don't take that window, you don't get into Ghana. Don't blame anybody. But I think it's an indictment, a serious indictment on us as a people. Not just on this administration or past administrations. It's reflective of all of us as Ghanaians. I mean, it's a joke, but you'd see people on social media say, I would prefer even now to go to Ukraine than be in Ghana. That is an indictment on us. We have failed our people. We have.
And when you have citizens, okay, beginning to express such sentiments, even in the face of apparent peril, you know, saying that I'd rather choose to be shot in a war between Russia and Ukraine than stay in Ghana, pick a Trotsky, go to the filling station, you know,
and be hit with my reality of 8.45 pesos.
You know, but I think my candid opinion is that all of these things are just, you know, loose talk, because really, if you have experienced even in the least the violence and I've been, I mean, you're covering.
Tell that to the Nigerians who supposedly say, I mean, they don't just want to go to Ukraine, they want to go and fight as
of course, there's
citizens and then
there's
become,
a legion that's being
citizens. They want to
being created by Zelensky and all of that, but you really don't want to. See, if you have been, and I've reported in some very violent situations, and at some point I've had to make judgment calls of having to take one more step, forward, or take one step backward. And all of these times
I remember
that I make
even
these decisions,
from Agbobulushi.
Exactly.
I remember how and and pellets here and there.
Crucial. But even tear gas.
I'll tell you about the reality. Tear gas
it give you tear gas.
Twice. One, I was so little I didn't know anything. But the other one in Monrovia, trust me. You know, sometimes when we talk about this whole coup discourse and all of that, and it will get into the papers, but when all this discourse goes on, sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that people who are voicing out or talking about it are opting for it. A coup is a no-no. It is nonsense. But I'll tell you what, if you've lived through having bullets whiz by your ears, if your house has been shelled, brought down, parts of it brought down, if you walk the streets of a war-torn country, not knowing where bullets will fly next. If you go by churches that are packed with human bodies, so much that an entire street is smelling the odor. When you see that carnage, you know that you'll do everything to forestall it. So sometimes I think, and I totally agree with those who say that, look, we should actually talk about these things. We shouldn't bury our heads in the sand, because you pretend it's not there.
Like they say, if your mom is passed and says no, she's sleeping, well, time will tell whether she'll wake up or not. But I mean, just back to the point that I was making, that
and really, let's wrap on that so we get into the papers.
People really don't want to be in war. They just think they do. They don't want to be in war, and so as you are there, I mean, we're seeing government attempt to, evacuate all of the people that it can. And today there's another set of students who are touching down in Ghana.
So the first batch was 17.
17. Then
16 on,
extra.
Is it the Emirates, and then one on Turkish Airlines.
And there's an extra set that are touching down today. And of course, we'll be bringing you pictures from the Kotoka International Airport. But back into the newspapers now. The Daily Statesman is leading with 25 assemblies received $150,000 as capacity support grant, with a picture of the local government minister Dan Butchie on page 4. And government won't hide Apiate report, Lands Minister assures, with a picture of the Sector Minister Samuel Abu Jenapor, who was on the floor of Parliament yesterday, giving some details of the investigative report that he commissioned. And AG charges Yoko to chase big companies for tax fraud. And Anodom Prayer on the PIAC report, he says that the report on Insoma Dojiri project is inaccurate, and he's challenging the findings of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. Now, the finder says Professor Butchie to speak on economy and politics at 65th Independence Day lecture and review single spine pay policy to address salary disparities. This according to delegates from the Labour conference that just ended and this week. Now, 28,152 vehicles in 15,972 crashes, an increase of 11.93% in crashes in 2021. This is the latest of data from the police MTTD on road crashes. Government has nothing to hide, Jinapor reiterating again on the Apiate explosion report. And Daily Guide says Alban Bagbin gone again, with a huge exclamation mark with a picture of Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbin, the Speaker of Parliament.
What do you think about his situation? You know, those in the majority caucus, those on the majority side, have said that it is high time we looked at the efficiency, effectiveness of the Right Honourable Alban Kingsford Sumana Bagbin to find out whether he is, I don't want to say fit for,
I mean, there's no better expression.
Fit for
the
office
duty, indeed.
In terms of his sturdiness, his health and everything. Of course, you never, speak ill of anybody based on their health. You never know what could befall you the next minute. But even when you look at our constitutional requirements for certain people in certain offices and soundness of mind and all of that, you would see that by extension, you can look at it and wonder, okay, so if in a year, we have the speaker for, let's say, a third of the year, or maybe half of the year, and half of the year he's not readily available and all of that. What does that mean for our legislative body, and what does that mean overall for our democracy as a country? But at the same time, you look at the fact that he wouldn't be the first to have, not even just in the legislative body, but across the board, the three arms of government, to have had health issues and, here and there. So for me, if you asked me, it is a concern. It is a big concern because, mind you, looking at the numbers, it's a hairline division in Parliament. It takes the Fomena MP to add to the majority caucus. Once he's not there, or once one person is not there, it means then that the first deputy or second deputy will
construct
have to
of Parliament
step in, whether Joe Wise or Esiama, and that would always affect numbers when decisions have to be made. But on the other hand, I feel our speaker actually has delivered maybe even beyond my expectations. You know why? He has, look at, for example, the budget given to the legislature and how he contested certain things. I feel those things. I like those tests of the system, because if you have a partisan speaker who is, and they will always be partisan, at least he for the NDC, but if you have a partisan speaker who is with the ruling administration, they would always lean a certain way. There are no tests. I mean, I love this current dispensation, but I also have my concerns about how viable it is having him with his health construct in Parliament.
And I guess it just waits to be seen, because, I mean, a Speaker of Parliament, hypothetically speaking, could be removed from office on the ground of ill health, insofar as it is, proving beyond reasonable doubt.
As it could other arms of government.
Indeed.
Right.
Beyond reasonable doubt that the peculiar health complication that the Speaker or whichever officer, for that matter, is facing is actually injurious, if you like, to the competencies that he brings to the table in terms of availability to discharge the duty and so on and so forth. And mind you, the Parliament is broken into sessions, which are broken into meetings, and each meeting, for instance, lasts for about 3 months or so. And if you have about 40 sittings, give or take, between 45 sittings in one meeting.
Right.
And if you have the Speaker gone for half of
let's say a third of them, or even half of them.
Half of that.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? I mean, properly speaking, what does that mean for the and quite objectively reasoning this out, what does that mean for his or her ability to actually deliver on the...
One thing I can say for certain as we wrap on this and move on to other stories, the 8th Parliament is delivering many issues that leave us thinking we ought to either reconsider our standing orders and even the constitutional considerations when it comes to some of these things. For example, a typical example is the Adwoa Safo situation, where some even experts who have followed Parliament for a long time say it's a gray area. Yes, there are some delineations, clear ones, but it's a little bit of a gray area when it comes to what exactly, how to deal with such situations. And they've not been dealt with in the past. That is one. And then even the situation to do with the speaker and whoever sits in there who is technically not the speaker, a speaker, if you like, depending on how they have
that matter, in fact, the second matter,
and whether they can vote. So all of these things
is currently in court, and the Supreme Court is going to rule on that. But on the issue of the, a member of Parliament absenting him or herself for the
it is clear.
The Supreme Court indeed has ruled on it. In fact, the case was brought to the Supreme Court by Professor Kweku Asare, in which case the Supreme Court said that absenting yourself as a member of Parliament for 15 days, as is in the standing orders and in the Constitution, without permission, essentially makes you automatically vacate your seat. And all that
do you know why that is a bit jocose?
No, all that needs to be done.
Curious. We've said all of that. What is happening? When Henry Quarty, the member of Parliament for Ayawaso Central, I believe, did it. When Asen Central MP did it. When the member of Parliament for
the Chief Nancy Minister.
I don't know, but there's another one who supposedly his absence was practically a year. In 2019, a full year. Forget 15 or 18 sessions.
No, you see,
a full year.
Water under the bridge for cases that are passed.
I think lower came something of this.
Now what we have is a parliament whose membership is critically destabilized by the absence of even one member. In fact, the decisions taken by parliament could be swayed in either ways just by the absence of one member of parliament. And so this situation is quite peculiar. And so following through and gleaning from the Supreme Court's ruling that you have automatically vacated your seat, and all that needs to be done is for the Clerk of Parliament to write to the Electoral Commission, notifying them of your vacation of post because of your absence from the House for 15 days without permission, and for a by-election to be held. That is all that needs to be done. And at least we've seen Ras Mubarak, for instance, petition Parliament, and not just on Adwoa Safo, but with the other members of Parliament that you've mentioned. So
as for the talk, we can do it. And as for the jojoing on the law, we can do that as well. But what pertains?
I think that.
I mean, if you listen to the Speaker's rhetoric, he himself has suggested that, Charlie, it's easier said than done. And it's not just... Adwoa Safo is still at post.
Really, I think that
she's still at post.
Everything, and she's
Kennedy Japan is still at post.
Also requested.
Henry Quarty is still at post.
I'm saying she's actually requested an extension, a 4-week extension, relative to the Speaker of Parliament.
Has that been granted?
Has that been granted? We don't know if that has been granted. I guess the point that I'm making is that Parliament now has a very crucial decision to make relative to Ras Mubarak's petition on where indeed it falls as a legislative house, a house that makes laws and expects citizens to follow.
The person I was referring to was Lower West Akim, a lawmaker in 2019, Che Bafo. He was the one I was making reference to. The Daily Graphic, Obechebe interchange progressing steadily, provide affordable houses. President challenges sector players. Honestly, I'm sorry, but when I hear about affordable housing in Ghana, I laugh. I'm sorry. I'm not being cynical. I laugh.
Don't laugh.
Affordable housing, like affordable for Manuel Granting.
Don't laugh.
Hands down big tax offenders. AG tasks Iyoko, and Professor Osei advocates alcohol tax to fund mental health. There's also no funds for integrity audit. Engineering Council appeals to government, page 16 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. RTI Commission fines police for 50,000 Ghana cedis for failure to release information to journalists. I find this one interesting. Page 17. Let me just do this. We have to go, and we'll be doing that shortly. But let me just take a look at this. I can't help myself.
While you find out, the president says that you should reject coup-mongers.
So
make sure you reject coup-mongers.
It says page 17, but It cannot be found on page 17. This is the bit when the papers decide to do you know matricule? Matricule. If I can't find this story, it would be something
that's 13,
else.
15
It
now.
said
17.
Okay, so here we are. Okay, so I think it's because of the special supplement in the paper. So the Right to Information Commission has fined the Ghana Police Service 50,000 for refusal to release information requested by a journalist of the Fourth Estate newspaper in Accra. You know where we're headed. The journalist Evans Aziamo Mensah made an RTI application on August 19, 2021 to request information on budgetary allocations given to the police from 2013 to 2020. You can get the rest of the details of the story there, but I think this is, it's a very positive development from where I sit. The custodian, nothing will be hidden on Apiate tragedy. 1 million jobs you start begins in April. Why aren't you jumping?
Am I?
1 million jobs you start begins in April.
I hope it doesn't
that's
end
the
like
custodian
NAPCO
newspaper.
And afforestation.
And Ghanaian publish labor calls for single spine review. Okay, it's a wrap from my end.
Just by way of addition, because you mentioned Apiate, the minister was on the floor yesterday. He said that Maxam, the company at the center of this entire explosion, really, the investigative team that conducted that report found that it had breached as many as 6 different regulations, including outsourcing the transportation of the explosive to an unlicensed company. And I think that we'll have more for you on myjoyonline.com and all of our other channels. That's it for me, man.
Stop the propaganda.
Oh yeah, sleep at
Against
home.
me.
Sleep at home. Sleep at home.
Publication of false news.
The fear. Why?
You are
the fear.
On that note, we shall go into sports and bring you more from there. Muftau is coming your way with a lot more in the sporting world. Do stay. We'll bring you that shortly.
For the first time in over 20 years, Accra House of Folk and Asante Kotoko will be squaring off under floodlight as they compete for this year's President Cup. President of the country, Nana Akufo-Addo, will be gracing that match. And also, what is happening to Liberty professionals, Ebusua Dwarfs, as well as the other team that was relegated in the Ghana Premier League last season? That question is internalized. How come they are struggling to gain promotion back to the Ghana Premier League? Many say they do not have a quality to compete at the lower side. And Richard Masters, who is the Premier League boss for England, says that Chelsea could be sold earlier than expected. We've got this and many more here on AM Sports with me, Muftau Nabila Abdullahi. Organizers of this year's President Cup, that is the Ghana League Clubs Association, the welfare body for clubs, they have paid a courtesy call on the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, and extended an invite to him to grace the match involving Accra House of Folk and Asante Kotoko, a match that is going to be in his honor. Speaking to the delegation that paid him a visit at the Jubilee House, the president said that there must be extra efforts to ensure that the Ghana Premier League is strong and vibrant. He also confirmed his availability to work the game in the stands.
Thank you for the invitation to be present at tomorrow's match. I accept it gladly. I spent a lot of time when I was very young following Asante Kotoko. And whenever they came down from Kumasi to play Hearts of Oak, in those days it was at Owusu Memorial Park. That's how old I am. It was before the stadium. It was a great day in the life of all of us young people in Accra. And I'm happy that this tradition is being kept alive and revived. I think it's to the credit of GALCA that you are determined to maintain this tradition of the President's Cup to coincide with the national anniversaries. It's an excellent tradition, And let's long may it continue. I want just to re-echo the point that the chairperson made, the need for us to have a strong, vibrant league. It is a strong, vibrant league that will enable us to have a strong, vibrant national side. So I think all of us have to put our heads together to see the way forward as to how we can strengthen our domestic league. We'll be crying and complaining about no longer being a powerhouse in African football and not winning the cup and everything. I think it's a question of organization. And organization begins with organizing a really strong domestic league. The people in this room, plus the government side, we have to put our heads together.
And now let's hear from organizers of the match. Their chairman is Kujo Fiano, and he's been speaking about the importance of having the game under floodlight. According to him, it will be breaking the ice following the 2001 May 9 disaster.
Yesterday, as we were inspecting the stadium, there was this joke between Kotoko and Haas. They are saying that it's not the buzzer is going to play. Players are going to play. So their focus is on the field, not on the bus. But those are side attractions. And then one thing, I think we said it last time, for the first time in 20 years, about 20 years, Haas and Kotoko play under floodlights. That jinx been broken for one, so that we can enjoy our El Clasico, as I said, as the accounts will say, and enjoy it there. So before, during, and after a game like this on a Friday evening. So even breaking that ice, bringing Kotoko and Haas back to the field at 6 o'clock in the evening, that is also a sad attraction on its own. And I think that we should all grab it.
Okay, and once again, you do confirm that everything has been done legally to ensure that
everything has been done
play under floodlights because of the white paper from the Okujeto.
The president is a lawyer. Yeah. So I think we've not done anything untoward against the law. So 6 o'clock we'll be there. I'm sure you'll be there.
Sure.
My colleagues in the studio, you all find time. Try and maneuver to get free time from 6 o'clock so that you are not locked in the studios.
On Monday, there was an announcement from the Ministry of Youth and Sports that spectators who wish to watch football in any stadium in the country must be fully vaccinated. It starts effective tonight when Hasafok and Asante Kotoko squares off for this year's President Cup. However, chairman of the Ghana League Clubs Association, Kujo Fiano, says he's unsure that the policy will be fully implemented. However, he's throwing his weight behind it because it is important to protect the lives of citizens.
We had our last meeting yesterday where the head of the Dr. Lord Comey, representing the office of the president, GALCA as the organizers, Ghana Football Association, the two clubs, the National Sports Authority and the ministry. And the green light had been given that we should have full capacity. And I've seen the release. As to whether it is going to be practicable, that will only show on the ground. But that notwithstanding, I want to say that you and I wouldn't want any Ghanaian to lose his or her life. If that directive will ensure the safety of Ghanaians, why not? Yes, we have to play the President's Cup. We want to honor the President. We want to raise funds. But if you're doing that, it will cost us even a single life. I think it will be better. As for the game, it could be postponed. It could be rescheduled. It could be, something could be done about it. But human life, we cannot control that. So we'll try and make the best out of the situation. We cannot say that we are throwing our hands in despair to say that because of this release, no, the game is going to go on. And I'm sure that the fans will be there to cheer the two clubs. I speak to you, has already moved into camp yesterday. Kotoko sneaked into Accra. They are not showing their presence, but we know they're in Accra. So the excitement is there. irrespective of that release from the ministry, we're going to have a good time tomorrow, 6 o'clock.
And the President Cup begins a weekend of fully packed action across match centres in the Ghana Premier League. Let's take a look at the fixtures for match day 19 in the competition. Hearts of Oak and Asante Kotoko, their matches have been postponed to Tuesday and Wednesday respectively. Kumasi Asante Kotoko will be travelling to Bechem United to face Bechem, who are currently third on the league log, whilst Hearts of Oak, their game, they'll continue to be at the Accra Sports Stadium to play that game. Let's take a look at the fixtures as they come up shortly on screen right now. And we'll also have the likes of Midiama SC, Ediana Stars, all in action. Kim Faisal, who have had a very good run. However, in the latter stages of the Premier League campaign, they've been struggling. This is what we have. On Saturday is Real Tamale United versus Legon City's Kim Faisal will come up against Ediana Stars, and these are the fixtures for Sunday. Dreams FC will play Elmina Sharks. Kerala United will come up against Ashanti Gold. Bibiani Gold Stars will host Midiama SC, and Accra Lions will play Great Olympics at the Accra Sports Stadium. And on Monday, we'll have 11 Wonders versus Brecum Chelsea. On Tuesday, Bachim United versus Asante Kotoko. And on Wednesday, it is House of Oak versus Wafa. These are the fixtures for match day 19 in the Ghana Premier League. Let's talk the Women's Under-17 World Cup qualifiers. And Ghana's Black Maidens are currently in Dakar, Senegal, to play Senegal in the qualifiers as they seek to book a ticket to India next year. Head coach of the team, Baba Nuhu, has been speaking. He says that he's very confident the girls will implement all the ideas that have been learned at the training grounds.
And then we're expecting that whatever that we have taken them to, when we get into the game, at least we'll start to see one of them coming to work, because this age group is actually a group that we want to develop so much. Even though we're going into competition, but then I'll be expecting to see certain things from them, because it's a long-term plan that we have for them. And so within the long-term plan, we are looking at for small things that will tell us that we are actually on course. And so my expectation is not so high, but I'm expecting to come back with at least a very respectable scoreline, because this is the start of our campaign. And I've been talking to them, I've been telling them that everybody should take their time, because this is the first time some of them I haven't seen the airport. This is the first time some of them will play. This is going to be the first time some of them will play football at the international level.
And we talk about the fate of Division 1 clubs, especially Liberty Professionals, Inter-Allies, and Ibisua Dwarfs. They were relegated after last season. Well, these teams are struggling for promotion back to the Ghana's top flight after poor start to their campaigns in the various zones in Division 1. My colleague, Kweku Lawrence, has been going through their numbers and comes through with this report.
After suffering relegation to Zone 3 of Ghana's Division 1 League last season, Liberty Professionals and Inter-Allies were expected to be the front-runners for an immediate return to the Ghana Premier League. However, life in the second tier has not been a piece of cake for them, as was expected, especially for Inter-Allies. The Tema-based club, at the end of the first round of games in the Division 1 League, find themselves in the second half of the table. Inter-Allies won just 4 of their first 15 games, losing 5 and drawing 6, leaving them in the 11th position. Liberty, on the other hand, have put behind them a poor start to the campaign and currently lie in third, winning 8 of their 15 games. The Scientific Soccer lads are just a point behind the leaders, and with 15 games still to play, could they take the opportunity to give their GPL return a shot in the leg? Former Ghana Premier League side Tema Youth are also looking to return after narrowly missing out last season, but they have to work harder to go top of the table, which is currently occupied by Kotoku Royals with 30 points.
Welcome aboard as we talk our big stories. And this morning, our main issue has to do with the single spine salary structure. Now, organized labor and government have agreed that there is an urgent need to review the single spine pay policy to ensure fair remuneration for workers. Now, the pay policy was introduced over a decade ago in 2010 to address pay gaps and worsening conditions of service of employees. But the labor unions say their service conditions are rather worsening. How so? Minister for Employment and Labour Relations Ignatius Bafwewa says the review is expected to be completed by March and a roadmap for implementation adopted. Let's find out what he had to say on this matter.
On our second thematic area, i.e. salaries, conditions of service and productivities, these were the outcomes. Government should review the single spine pay policy to address the current issues of salary inequities, inequalities, weak salary administration, and weak management of conditions of service. In this regard, government should constitute a technical committee by end of March 2022 to undertake a preliminary review of the single spine pay policy, including cost implications, and advise government on addressing these issues. The review should be aligned to the next budget cycle. Thereafter, government should develop a roadmap of the implementation of the revised pay policy. To ensure sustainability in compensation payments, the social partners must work together to agree on a medium-term framework for adjustment of public sector pay and to work collectively to improve revenue mobilization. 12. Government should resource the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission to build its capacity to perform its functions for pay administration in the public service more efficiently and effectively. The social partners should work with government to review the legislative framework for pay administration in the public sector to support the reforms towards addressing issues including salaries inequities and irregularities, weak link between pay to productivity and sustainability of the payroll.
And we know part of this has been triggered by the National Labour Conference, the maiden one, and matters emanating from there. Well, joining us for the conversation, we have Senyo Ajabing, a Labour consultant and HR specialist. He joins us as we talk about the single spine pay policy and, of course, the single spine salary structure. Mr. Ajabing, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for making the time to be with us this morning. I know you're on a tight leash in terms of your time, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. So how did we get here? And I ask this question from the fact that with such policies, we would have expected to review them probably more often. Right from the outset, we had the situation where there was a bit of joy at the fact that salaries were going to be reviewed. And then we had instances where some salaries were adjusted and some people felt it was comfortable being there. But for some people, there was no material increment as they would have expected it. But we've waited some 12 years, and that is where I would like us to start from. How often should we have been reviewing a policy like this?
Thank you very much. Good morning to your listeners. Generally, such policies would have to go through a comprehensive audit sometime after 5 years to be able to correct all the technical issues. And then by the 10th year, it should have gone through systematic review to a point where it is, achieving most of its objectives. Unfortunately, I've not heard that any such audits have been done by the stakeholders or discussions by the stakeholders. And then beyond the 10th year, we are still yet to do any policy because over 10 years is way overdue to review such policies.
So we've already waited too long, far too long. You're suggesting that in a maximum of 5 years, we ought to have taken a second look at this. We've waited for over a decade, in fact, 12 years. And so we've already waited too long. What would you say moving forward, even before we talk about that now, in terms of a review policy?
I think that the first step has been taken. The National Labour Conference would tease out all the various issues for the commencement of consultative process, which would then take care of all. T will then have to sit down and draft the necessary changes, send it through the tripartite committee, and then beyond that, it goes through the processes of legislation, and then the change can be done. I think that immediately, though, something can also be done. The LI can be reviewed. Fair Wages and Salaries Act of 2007 can be reviewed, and that is normally easier to do. So that would start taking care of the issues before the long approach of, or the long-standing approach of reviewing legislation then comes policy, so that it can be taken care of and immediately the legislation reviewed. Yeah.
So we had this policy to regulate the payment of public service workers, especially those falling under Article 190 of the 1992 Constitution, civil service, audit service, the judicial service, and all of that. And some, I'll have to pose this question. For you, from where you sit, what was the proper understanding you had of what this policy was meant to achieve? And do you feel it has achieved that in any shape or form? To what extent, if you do agree that it has achieved its purpose?
Well, this is an interesting question. I think that the policy came about from the conversation somewhere around 2005. It was then decided that certainly productivity has to be matched with appropriate remuneration. So then it was agreed that the policy would then, a pay policy would then be put in place to kind of take care of the needs of workers as a way. So that generally was the beginning of the conversation that led to this pay policy. But the major thing, I think, from the government side that I remember was that the government payroll was largely scattered. Various public service groupings had various different, sub to them, and so everything was disintegrated, even though the civil service and a large section of the public sector were on the GUSS, Ghana Universal Salary Structure. So it became important public sector organizations were using their IGF to pay certain large allowances, and also to ensure that there was control over remuneration spending or remuneration expenditure in the public services. So for me, that has been largely achieved. Unfortunately, not up enough to make any difference. And here, I don't think that we can blame the organized labor or labor employees too much, because economic conditions just have not been able to ensure that the policy is funded well. So some of these things were the objects of the pay policy. And for me, in terms of the consolidation, it has been achieved. Unfortunately, the pay expectations of the employee and organized labor has not been achieved. They have been lacking, or enough consultations have been lacking. And then finally, I also think that dispute resolution mechanisms that the Fair Wages and Salaries Act put in place to ensure that disputes when they occur, grievances when they occur, are resolved smoothly, those have not also worked. So these are some of the areas that I believe would be important to employees, and so that we have, a more peaceful environment on the labor front.
And it's important that you mentioned that more peaceful, environment on the labor front, especially as we've seen the sort of agitations we've seen in recent times from different groupings, different unions, the teacher unions and all of that, UTAG prominent. In terms of, the component where people would get proper remuneration, that has been fulfilled. But when it comes to the equivalence, when it comes to performance, that is what we've not been able to manage properly. Is that what you were suggesting before you wrapped up?
Suggesting is that the structure of consolidating government payroll to bring all government workers generally under one payroll, so that issues of relativity, government can know how much, for example, in terms of cost,
right,
that is applicable to the payroll. However, I'm also saying that certainly employees' expectations under the policy have not been met because they still believe that they are not well paid.
Right.
Now, that is where the whole problem lies. If the salary administration or the single spine pay policy is, then of course we cannot say that the policy has been very successful. But when it comes to the structure, it has been sorted out, and that's a good thing, to consolidate government expenditure under one payroll for its sector workers. That is important. That has been achieved. But still, per the expectations of the employees, it is not. We cannot say that the policy has been successful.
How relevant do you feel this maiden National Labour Conference has been in light of all these matters that we're discussing? How innovative is it that 12 years on, we have this kind of conference with the minister, the sector minister for Labour and Employment there? How relevant is it?
We've not had enough fora to consult on issues regarding labor. The labor stakeholders have not consulted enough, in my view. And even if they do, most of the level of the tripartite committee, and even the tripartite committee, I don't believe meets very often. There has to be more platforms for stakeholders to constantly engage. And the more they engage, the more grievance. Labor relations is a relationship, and it is not a relationship for services. It's a human relationship. And so where there is lack of communication or a reduced communication, there would be increased problems because the disagreements are going to grow. And I think that is what has happened here. So this forum on the calendar of the Ministry of Labour and Employment Relations, and make sure that it happens. But not only that, more platforms like this have to be created in different forms. The GTUC can put their own platform and have maybe at least 2 fora like this in a year. The ministry has theirs. Maybe other CSOs of labor can also create such platforms so that we keep in. Indeed, the Wages and Salaries Act, where it's also a tripartite platform where they negotiate as well as deliberate on issues concerning the single spine pay policy. So it's a good thing in the right direction. We need more of that. And I think that there haven't been enough consultations, and that's why I believe we are having all of
So following from this, you would want to see, apart from maybe something on a national scale, maybe a regional scale, or more consultation from the sector ministry from time to time. How often would you say that we should be looking at such engagement to ensure that we have something watertight moving forward into the next 5 years?
I think that a minimum of 3 government agency and then also employers association to continue talking and make sure that we're able to overcome all the differences that we're having in the system.
All right. So that would be just about 1 every quarter, if I get your suggestion.
Basically, that would be enough. Yes.
All right. Now, let's look at the fact that in this year, yes, we've had that, just a few days ago, we had that interaction, and very recently, I should say. And the proposal has been made that a lot of issues. And I know for a fact that they are also going to be reviewing some of the cost implications of a review of the policy. What are the dynamics going to be? I mean, the standard of living or the cost of living has changed. We know about the increments from time to time when it comes to public sector workers versus maybe Article 71 office holders, for example, who are in a different category. But what would you, as this technical committee reviews the single spine pay policy, what are some of the things that you feel cannot be missed that we ought to be focusing on in this review?
Well, you at that forum, I've mentioned it, but this is a great platform to mention it. You know, salary increments in Ghana have normally followed the inflationary increments, okay, the inflationary figures. So that normally would mean that the nominal or actual increment of salaries hardly occur. So if inflation is 10% and you increase salaries by 10%, that only means that nominal terms made any substantial value addition to that salary. You just restored it from inflationary losses. So I think that that is the structure of negotiating the salary should shift from just inflationary restoration to value addition. That way we would see a more realistic increment that will sustain employees. As it is, when you continue to inflationary increments or you lag behind the inflationary figures, then the value of the supplement within this 12 years to the basic salaries on the single spine pay policy pay structure. And so that would be one of the things to look at, how increments are done and the factors that go into the increment. And for example, they can agree on specific factors that beyond inflation and other economic factors that would inform the increment. Another area I see is that there are a lot of costs to the payroll in kind,
right.
Non-cash allowances or non-cash benefits, you know, on the payroll is huge, and under those circumstances, it becomes difficult to track that. So instead of say provide them with certain free services,
right,
or like fuel and so on, you want to pay the money to them, consolidate the allowances and especially the benefits in kind, consolidate them into cash so that it can be seen and can be enhanced. That way, workers will pay more tax and money, the government would also benefit. For me, these are the two areas I think should be looked at. And if this is done, we will maybe start seeing a more credible, a more realistic government payroll, which is acceptable to all the stakeholders.
Let me bring in Dr. Kwabena Nyakun Otu. He is Director of Labor Research and the Policy Institute. He joins the conversation as well. Doc, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. What is your initial reaction to this entire enterprise, 12 years on, to review the single spine pay policy after 12 years? Of course, we've had the National Labour Conference, and on the back of that, some of these are being deliberated upon. Your quick reaction to the relevance of the timing.
Okay, thank you. If you had a review in 2015, I remember in 2015, the IMF was here. And as the TUC has always been saying, when IMF enters your country, your government doesn't listen to anybody again. So it was impossible for us to do that review in 2015. If you look at some of the issues that my co-panelist has just raised about having realistic pay, and you look at the existing pay on the single spine, we wonder whether a 10% inflationary plus adjustment will give us that kind of realistic pay. So if your pay is 800 Ghana cedis and we manage to get you 20%, which is to your pay? And will it be commensurate with all the increases in fuel pricing, transportation and all that? Will it be commensurate? And he also talks about points like consolidating allowances. I mean, to be able to do that, and let me also indicate that allowances have been consolidated, category 1, category up to category 3. 1 and 2 has been consolidated to a large extent. The allowances that actually affect the top issues relating to these conditions of service, a large number of workers in the public sector covered by single spine that are not covered by any form of condition of service. So to be able to do this requires a comprehensive review of the single spine pay policy. But not just that, also a review of pay in the public sector general, because we also talk about all the inequities in the public sector pay between those on the single spine, and then between those on the single spine, Article 71, the SOEs and other state agencies, where the pay disparities are large and growing.
I'll be right back to you. Let me just conclude with Senor Ajabeng on a few matters because he would have to take leave of us shortly. Mr. Ajabeng, so you have delineated for us or outlined some of the crucial matters and the timing and all of that. But in terms of your expectations, you have said that we should have maybe some such sessions, maybe quarterly and all of that. But as this technical committee goes into reviewing this pay policy, the single spine pay policy, what are the timelines you feel we should be looking at? And I ask this in the context of many such endeavors. So in terms of getting something concrete and enforcing it, what would you say would be your timelines if you were effecting this?
Well, for me, I think 6 months will be adequate. And that means a lot of work, day in and day out, sometimes nights, to ensure that this is done. This should be handled as an emergency.
Just to get it clear, 6 months for what? 6 months for the review process or 6 months between review and the start of implementation?
6 months for the review process.
Okay.
Because a lot of consultations have to be done. And with these things, you cannot really rush it. But you can handle it as an emergency and ensure that it goes very fast. I mean, it would be very unrealistic to say that 3 months would be reviewed as well. So under those circumstances, if you give half a year, 6 months, that means before the close of this year, all the work is done, and some of the implementation that can be done without changing the law can then take effect from next budget run, that is from 2023. So I think we have time to be able to do a lot until we see some progress where we can integrate some of these outcomes into the next budget and then implement aspects of it, if possible, in 2023, while we comprehensively review the law and implement the law accordingly.
So if we're using some 6 months, we're in March now, if we're using some 6 months, August, September?
Yes.
And then what would be the timeline? You say in 2023, first quarter, maybe to start implementation of those decisions that are made?
Yes. So certainly, I'm sure that some of the outcomes may be technical and may not really bother on changing the law before it's implemented. And so those can then be integrated into the budget and it will be implemented from next year while the legal review process goes on from the ministry and so on. And then finally, the reviewed law is passed maybe sometime next year. It is difficult to be able to put a hand on the specifics of the processes for reviewing a law. So it's not easily determined to put timelines on the reviewing of a law and when the law can be passed and implemented. But the technical aspects of the policy that may need review, but not reliant on the change of the law can be done by the end of the year for implementation from 2023. That timeline, I think, would be, if taken, seriously enough, I think.
I'll allow you to excuse us. So you've made mention of something that I feel is crucial. Can we handle an upward adjustment currently of the single spine payment policy, considering our economic situation? And I don't need to paint that picture to you. You know it better than I do. And also considering our poor, very poor public sector work ethic. Because in the end, the work that is also done must be commensurable with whatever adjustments are made. Do you feel this is a good time? I mean, we've not done it in the past, but is it feasible as of this time?
From information available, pronouncement of the Finance Ministry and other government agencies, even international economic partners, show that it may be quite difficult to do anything about realistic upward adjustments of public sector pay at this time.
Right.
And I don't think that I would be speaking out of context if I say that it is near impossible. But
it is near impossible.
Yes, but under these circumstances, there can still be consultations, and certain areas looked at is against the economic conditions that we are facing now, like the high fuel tariffs and so on. So some adjustments can be done, but a realistic increment would be quite that would be possible at this time. As for work ethic, organization, culture, productivity, we put it right at the doorstep of management or of management of an organization. So
right.
for government sector, government would need to put express structures form. And when all these have been done and performance is still inadequate or productivity is still inadequate, there are structures in the law that can have, performance review, and even if terminations and, other sanctions for non-performance, these can be done. But it will not be fair to say productive when we know that evidence-wise, they are not well tooled, they are not well resourced. The structures of managing them is also the management of public sector workers, so that we can see some improvement in, like you say, work ethic and then productivity.
Mr. Ajabing, thank you so much for your time with us this morning. And we know you're going to be contributing in all of this process. I wish you the best in those enterprises. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you very much. And good morning, Doc.
Dr. Otu, if you can hear me.
Morning.
Good morning.
Right. So Mr. Jabing was just saluting you there. Mr. Jabing, thank you so much for your time. Single spine salary structure and its implementation over the last 12 years that you feel as this technical review committee is going to be, looking at this till the end of the month of March. What are some of the things that you feel they really ought to be focusing on?
Okay. So, I've mentioned one already.
Right.
A pay review such as the single spine pay policy ought to be reviewed occasionally as we go along, given that things keep changing. So, for example, things about market premium relating to scarce skills in the public sector. Given the changing context of employment, such skills will be evolving with constant review, occasional review of the policy. The second thing, a major failure is the fact that, the single spine had a technical component and administrative component. Unfortunately for us, we've used administrative means to solve technical problems over many years, over the past 12 years of its implementation. So within the industrial relations space, the groups that make the most noise, then administratively we call them and give them something as their placement on the single spine. So we need to be going forward, the review process must be clear on things that you can solve administratively and those that you have to resort to technical analysis to be able to resolve. The other point is about and Mr. Jamin mentioned it, the laws within the public sector. So we want to harmonize pay. We want to reduce inequities. We want to place everybody on the same spine to be able to reduce the inequities. But you have multiple laws and legal regime within the public sector that determine pay. So you put people on the single spine and they tell you that from the Constitution of the Republic, it is my board that is supposed to determine my pay and not the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. You put people there, or you want to put people there, and they tell you that my enabling legislation, the Act of Parliament, says that it is the office of the president that must determine my pay. So one thing that ought to happen, if you really want to harmonize pay, is to ensure that we first harmonize the laws and the legal regime relating to pay and conditions of service within the public sector. We need to take a very serious view of those laws if you really must avoid the challenges that have attended the single spine pay policy.
So as you talk about this harmonization of the law and regulations, apropos of this discussion that we're having, but that is also going to take quite a bit of time, isn't it? I mean, if you look at the TUC and what it has been saying in terms of the need for a review, and if you look at the fact that, like all of you are saying, we should have been reviewing this in a 5-year cycle, and it's now 12 years, and we're having our very first review, then you would see that, I mean, time is of the essence, but at the same time, you talk about all these harmonizations and legal elements. Is that not just going to mean that this could end up like another, one of our commissions or committees?
I mean, it's a bit risky given the timing in which we find ourselves. We normally say when in fact time to do the things the way you ought to be done. Hello?
Doc, I can hear you. I can hear you. If you could just go back to the point you were making, because yes, I can hear you, Doc. Can you hear me?
Hello.
All right, so we're going to do this. It appears so that when he can hear me, then we continue with the conversation. Of course, we're talking about the single spine salary structure, from the single spine payment policy, whose implementation started just about, or the implementation of which started just about some 12 years ago in 2010. And for the first time, we're having a review on the back of that National Labour Conference. Doc, welcome back. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Great. So if you could just go back to the whole point you were making to that point on harmonizing the laws and regulations, I'd be very grateful.
Okay. So the point I'm making is that, yes, we need time to be able to do some of these things properly and in a manner that will stand the test of time.
Right.
Unfortunately, when we say the times in which we find ourselves, what time is it? It's a time when government is hard-pressed. Government has deficits on its hand. It has high debt on its hand. We recognize that. But this is also a time when workers are also hard-pressed. I mean, in Kwatia, we managed to show the deficit at the micro level for workers, the base pay on the single spine, and what it can do or it can do. So the deficit was on both sides, macro level deficit, micro level deficit, and we need to contend with both of them. So there are things we can do initially, sustainability of macroeconomic environment.
Right.
So we need to recognize those things and do them.
What are some of those? Because, I mean, it's going back to the question I posed to Mr. Jabing a short while ago that, look, how realistic are these? And will it not break the bank? Will it not leave us in the red? Because we're in dire economic straits. So can you outline some of those ones that in the interim, in the short term, or maybe medium term, we can be looking at?
Of course, from a worker's perspective, I mean, part of the effort should be to reduce the deficit at the macro level, to begin to cushion workers. So there ought to be some increases for workers.
Right.
That's why we cannot run away from it. But we also realize that it is not possible to. So we need to come to the table and give and take compromises on both sides. But we need to have our eye on the medium and the long term, the sustainability of the public sector compensation system, both for government but also for workers. We need to have our eye. And the technical review must ensure that if workers are sacrificing today because government cannot meet squarely all the expectations we have, we ought to be assured that when we sacrifice in the next 2 or 3 years, a policy that is properly reviewed and that is able to give workers pay that is reasonable, that is realistic, that is also equal, not equal as in same, but that eliminate all the inequities we currently see within the public sector pay compensation system.
Right.
We don't want a situation where, for example, we take a COLA in 2014, 3% in 2015. These are sacrifices by workers. And that is, if you do an analysis, and we have still not recovered from that. So if we must sacrifice, what would be in for us 2 or 3 years down the lane? What will our sacrifices amount to? Will it amount to us having a realistic pay 3 years from now? Is a question we must answer.
And that is a question we must indeed answer. But just answer this for me. When I was interacting with Mr. Ajabing, as part of his proposals or his thoughts, he did mention that we ought to consolidate some of the allowances going to these public sector or public service workers into cash so that we give them cash for them, and in the end, we're also able to subscribe to.
Of course, some allowances have been more or less consolidated. The entire single span actually consolidated Category 1 allowance. What we left is Category 2 and Category 3. That one is also being determined and put in what you call conditions of service for most or for some public sector workers. The challenge is that there's a large number of public sector workers not covered by any collective agreement. If they were to be covered, then you will have those allowances also in their condition of service. And some of them you cannot consolidate. For example, you have acting allowance. So you cannot consolidate that into your pay because you don't know when your boss will leave for you to act. Okay, so it's as and when. I mean, the most serious thing about allowances is the Category 4 allowance, where a public officer is entitled to a car, free fuel, a driver, is also entitled to housing. The consultant who worked on the single span actually recommended that either we discontinue with them or we monetize them.
Right.
So, and he's right. He said, I mean, somebody takes 5,000. It's a low pay. He's a director at the ministry. But he also lives in a government bungalow, fully furnished, somewhere at cantonment. His 5,000 is very low. But what would be the price or the rent of that furnished apartment on the open market? It could be something like $3,000, $4,000. But he doesn't count that as part of his pay. So that is why the consultant itself recommended that either we discontinue with these allowances or we monetize them and become part of the pay of those people. And I'm sure that the technical review committee will have to take all of these things in mind. What can we do about these allowances?
And all of this also brings to mind the likes of UTAG and CITAG and all of them, and even some of the transport unions, the teachers' unions, and what they have been requesting, the COLA you spoke of a short while ago. Do you foresee that this could, in a way, positively affect their situation, even considering UTAG, for example, and its prolonged action, like we've seen in recent times?
I mean, it's difficult, as you have alluded to, in this circumstance, for any worker group to think that you will get realistic pay in 2022. It is difficult. And that is where there ultimately ought to be some sacrifice. But we also recognize that even if it's difficult for government, it is even much more difficult for workers, and something has to be done. recognizing that we will not be able to achieve all the things that we want to achieve. And I think what ought to happen is that we give ourselves time, 2-3 years, to fix the many problems we have in the public sector pay system. It's difficult to fix all of them because the challenges are huge. The pay level on the single span is absolutely low. It is declining in real terms. And we also see all the inequities between the single span Article 71, between the single span, the state enterprises that are making losses by giving themselves huge salary increases. All of this has to be dealt with. But it cannot be dealt with today. It requires technical analysis. It requires costing them, and it requires giving our time to see what government can do between now and the end of the year, what government can do for 2023, 2024. But all of that must culminate in a situation where workers can feel that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
There are conditions to improve next year, even if not, we are not getting everything we want this year.
And that bit, that final bit you wrapped with, brought to mind something that in 2019, President of NAGRAT, Angel Kabonu, said at the time that without reviewing some of these, it just allows government, the employer, to take advantage of some of those in the public service. And again, I'll go back to the bit about whether this is going to have the desired effect. Only time will tell. But tied to that, there has been the suggestion for a national, unemployment insurance scheme in respect of the fact that we have this entire situation where a lot of people as well, even those in the public service from time to time, are let go of, and there is that flux. What do you make of this national unemployment insurance scheme? In other jurisdictions, we have systems to ensure that even those who are unemployed have certain benefits. Here, that is non-existent. What do you make of such a scheme?
I think it's an important initiative that ought to be pursued, and not just for those in the public sector, but even more importantly for those in the mining, private sector, in the maritime industry, in the hotels, where occasionally people lose their job for many reasons. But of course, through no fault of theirs. And it's important that when people lose their job, there's something there for them. Because see, what happens is that you've lost your job and you need to look for another one. Sometimes it's even impossible for people to get the transportation to move to another place where there's a job vacancy for them to take advantage of. So a scheme such as this actually pushing workers in such high times as unemployment situations. But it also helps stabilizes the employment situation. There are many times when employers face challenges. They need to let go of workers. There are some employers who feel that it is too disheartening to let go such workers. So they are not able to let them go, and they keep the workers they may not need. So it helps stabilize the labor market, both for employers, but also for workers. And I mean, if you talk about Africa, I think it's only South Africa, Mauritius. Yeah, these are the two countries that I know of that have unemployment insurance scheme. COVID has taught us a lesson that we need to prepare because we could have such pandemics occasionally. So we need to prepare for it. And we are not the only one trying to do something like this. Kenya has given itself to establish a fully fledged unemployment insurance scheme by the end of 2022. And we should also aim to be able to do that as a way of cushioning workers when they are hit by unemployment situation. And we know these things are with us. People are losing their jobs day in, day out because of pandemics, for technological changes, for unforeseen events that hit their employers. And we need to make sure that such people are supported in the transition to get another job.
Right. Now, in the midst of all of these discussions, we have the tripartite committee that, involving labor, employers, the Ministry for Employment and Labor Relations and all of that. But we also have, interestingly, the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, which is crucial to this entire enterprise. They have hinted, they had already hinted of this endeavor to review the single spine payment policy. What are you looking forward to as far as the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission is concerned? And I link that to the fact that in the past they've had some, assessments, surveys, and all of that, which haven't amounted to much, because in the end, you need to have your pay packet. You need to have the wherewithal from the employer to be able to even match whatever the surveys reveal. So what are your expectations in this regard?
I think one of the challenges we have noticed around all this pay policy predicament is the weakness of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. Weakness in terms
the weakness of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. Is that what you said?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. As an institution, it is weak and it ought to be strengthened. It ought to be strengthened financially, but also human resource-wise.
Right.
To be able to be on top of the game of administering public sector pay in Ghana. So you have a situation where many workers complain, there's no response, and then they are compelled to embark on strike or some manifestations before they react. If you look at the Fair Wages Law, for example, they are not just to negotiate pay on the single spine. The law says that they are to negotiate pay wherever public funds are being used. So they ought to be able to move to Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority and negotiate on behalf of government, because there it is not consolidated fund, but the money they are using is also public funds. And that is one way by which you can break the inequities between the single spine, because they have full knowledge of what they have negotiated on the single spine. And they should bring that knowledge to bear in all the other public sector institutions. Because what we have today is a runaway galloping inequities between those on the single spine and other structures. But for them to be able to do that, they need human resources, experts, competencies, but they also need financial resources to be able to do such a thing.
So for you, to wrap the conversation, Doc, what would be your timelines in terms of a feasible, time belts that we can follow between the survey or, in fact, the work the technical committee will be doing in terms of review, which ones would be adopted, and then implementation? Mr. Jabin gave his. What would be yours to conclude the conversation?
Mine is actually in the communique. The communique says that the technical review committee must be in place by the end of March.
Right.
We are thinking of a review process that is aligned to the next budget cycle. And you know that the next budget will be ready in November.
Right.
So part of what the committee comes up with will have to be reflected in the next budget. Okay. So we are looking roughly at the end of the year, in the next 6-8 months, we need to have some initial reports that can feed into the next budget cycle. But we ought to be mindful that such critical things are not done in an emergency fashion. There are aspects of it we can fast track. But the problem with hurrying things up also is that if you don't take care, you get to the situation you just described, that it becomes one of those technical reports that gather dust. We ought to make sure that we are realistic in our views.
Right.
We ought to make sure that we make deeper analysis that can actually impact the lives of people. And we should avoid knee-jerk emergency approach, ambulance service approach to some of these things, because even though the issues are very immediate, workers are suffering immediately, and sometimes it becomes emotional. But salary matters ought not to be solved emotionally, ought not to be solved in an ambulance fashion. We have to have a medium-term, long-term perspective in mind going forward. But also, there are things the next budget must take on board to be able to address immediate concerns.
Doc, I know I said that was the final bit to you, but this just came to mind. Curious thought. Has the single spine salary structure, that payment policy, from where you sit over these last 12 years, has it served its purpose? Has it lived up to expectation? Briefly on that.
I mean, if you look at the broad, when Kojo Maredu first mentioned single spine in 2006, and then in Kwatia, I read the statement he made. If you look at all the problems he cataloged, which single spine was supposed to be solving, some have been solved, but not all of them have been solved. So, for example, it says that we are bringing all workers on under 190, Article 190 of the Constitution, on a single spine. That has largely been done. And it's also taught about removing inequities in the public sector pay system. To a very large extent, we have failed in doing that because the inequities persist, and to some extent, they are actually growing. Okay. So some has been achieved, but a significant, important component of the single spine have not been achieved.
So on the back of what you're saying now, if you had to score the policy over these last 12 years out of from 1 to 10, how would you score it?
I'll give it 6.
6 out of 10.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kwabena Nyako Otu. Thank you so much for your time with us this morning. He is a Director of Labour Research and Policy Institute. He's been sharing his thoughts with us on this all-important matter. But stay with us. We take a break, and when we return, we talk about mind matters. It would also be interesting, on the back of the single spine, to have your thoughts on how you are surviving, how you're managing matters with the current situation. Do shoot us your messages with the hashtag #AMShow. We'll be right back. But on this last leg of the show, even as you've shared with us your thoughts about how you are managing, let's talk about the March blood donation awareness walk at the Laboma Beach here in Accra. It's tomorrow, and joining us in the studio to share thoughts with us on that, Mame Kwaba, Brand Ambassador, National Blood Service Ghana. She joins us for a conversation. We also have Stephen Danso, Blood Donor Recruitment Officer. Thank you, Mame. Thank you, Stephen, for joining the conversation.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
And blood, crucial. No replacement for it. It must be another human being donating to you. Yes. I hear recently the blood banks have faced a crisis of sorts because the donations we used to have are no longer the case. But that is why we are embarking on this enterprise. So I'll start with you, Mami. Tell us a bit about how all of this started, the March, blood donation and fitness walk.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So this will be the 5th year. It was a milestone birthday, and I just decided that this is something I would probably do as a brand ambassador to support stocking our blood banks. So this started in March, for the month of March, and March like you're walking. And we started from Ayimensa to Pediase because, a lot of people walk in that vicinity. And the whole idea was supposed to be an awareness campaign because we were always talking about giving blood and blood donation and things like that. But I didn't really see like a walk, supporting the cause. So this whole thing was supposed to be an awareness campaign so that anybody who came there left being a bit more knowledgeable about the issue of blood, because a lot of times you realize that if people knew the issues we had, they'll probably get more blood. And so as you can see, even like in a t-shirt, Danso has a different message, give blood and keep the world beating. Mine is fight COVID, fight COVID and get blood. And so as we are walking, again, it's like a way for people to educate themselves about what's going on. So we've done this, and this time around, we're lucky we did it for 3 years till 2020, and then COVID hit. But we're lucky that we had the COVID, we did it just before COVID. And then 2021, we had a virtual one, it was like a mini one, and then we're going to do this time around at Laboma Beach. We're bringing it to Accra just to, it's different, and again, with COVID, it's a bigger area and all that. So we're excited about it because, it's a beach walk.
I am excited too.
Yeah, thank you. It's going to be fun, really exciting. And we're going to start from Laboma, walk through the La Township, back around Artists Alliance and get actually on the beach. And the last leg of the walk is a beach walk. And then when we get there, there's going to be fun activities because, blood is not necessarily the most exciting thing to talk about.
Right.
And so you have to create the moments and excitement around it to help people start the conversation. And so you're going to be games and, lots of activities for us to.
And it's good we're starting the conversation from right here as well. But let me bring you in, Steve. So how crucial is it that people donate blood? I want you to put the picture out there. Some people still don't get it that, look, there's no replacement, and if you don't give, whether it's O positive or negative, B this or that, people need to donate blood. Tell us what the situation is.
The situation is not good now, and blood plays an important role in our body system. Even when we take in oxygen, it's the blood that carries the oxygen to our various organs. So when somebody loses blood to a certain level, then that could lead to critical conditions that the person may lose his or her life. And we have a lot of conditions, patients in our various health facilities that need blood. Some are babies who are severely anemic, road traffic accident victims, our mothers who are delivered, baby crying, the mother is weak and bleeding, needing blood. When it gets to that point, doctors are unable to do anything unless blood is made available. And currently, during the pandemic, we had acute shortages of blood. The blood banks were empty, and that led to a lot of needless death. So we are still appealing to people to come and donate, because if we don't donate, there's no way we could save some patients who are critically ill, needing blood. And as Mami Kwaba said, we need to create the awareness, because a lot of people have relaxed during the pandemic, as if other patients are well. We are talking more about COVID, but we need to still sensitize people that, yes, we need blood to save our own.
So let's not forget about blood. In the midst of all the issues we're having, I mean, sometimes people get carried away with the economic situations and everything. It'll be again, but with blood, you can't do that. You never know. It could be you, and it could be someone close to you. So what should people expect tomorrow? What is the time? What should people be looking out for? What are the timelines?
Sure. So like March for the month of March, and March like we're walking. That's how the name came about. So 5:30, we're going to start with aerobics, and then we walk through the township, like I mentioned, and back to the finishing point. And when we get there, we're going to do a bit more aerobics, exercise, activities, fun activities. There's also going to be a blood donation exercise there, the first ever beach blood drive. So that's exciting. I mean, think about it. Beach is always exciting, and donating blood on the beach, it can't get better than that. And a lot of activities, I mean, board games, different, and we have different groups coming.
Maybe some beach football group.
What's our football, volleyball. If you're lucky, we might actually see fishermen, catching some fish and all that. So it's just going to be different, exciting. And I think there's something in it for everyone. Yes. And so we're going to be there in the morning, throughout the day. We're encouraging people to be there on time, because we know that there are lots of obligations for everyone. So be there on time so that you don't miss out on any part of the fun.
Great. So let's stay away from COVID, and let's donate blood at the same time. If you're coming, get your mask ready so that we all stay protected as well. But Mama Kwaba, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Any final words?
Yeah, sure. I also wanted
very briefly on that.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to use this opportunity to thank the SHS schools who have kept the blood banks alive. What most people don't realize is that they really give a lot of blood. And now we have this, that's why when the schools are on break, the blood banks run dry. And now we have this tracker app, which is supposed to recognize their efforts. So the blood service recruiters, when they go to the school, they're supposed to put the information in that app. So I want to encourage all the SHS students that anytime the blood service comes to your school, ensure they're using the app, because that's how your efforts are going to be recognized. So if you can think about this like, intercore or math and science, we kind of thing, trying to leverage the school pride to encourage students to give blood.
That's a good one. We encourage you to do that. Mama Kwaba, Brand Ambassador, National Blood Service Ghana. We also had Stephen with us, who is with the Blood Service as well. Stephen Danso, Blood Donor Recruitment Officer. And let's quickly do this. Happy birthday to Michael Asalekum Isa at the UNDP and the FAO. A very happy birthday to you, and we wish you the very best. But I cannot draw the curtains on the show without acknowledging Catherine Gordon, who fitted me out this morning. Catherine Garments can be located in Medina New Road near the Rolling Circle. The number to call 0277 580-050. On Instagram, it is Catherine_Garments. On Facebook, Catherine Garments GH. So this is how we draw the curtains on the show this morning. But Mami Kwaba, you intimated there's something little you want? Very brief, because we're out of time.
Thank you. This year, one thing that's different, we are also using that to generate awareness about keeping our environment clean. And so, as you know, with COP26 and everything else, and the initiative with the government about clean operation, clean of frontage, and all that, it's another opportunity that as we're walking, let's be mindful of everything that we're doing.
Right.
So we have all our partners like Casons and the National Blood Service, the Casons group coming together to ensure, and all our friends and family coming together to ensure that as we are giving blood, we're also being mindful of our environment. Thank you.
Mami. It's been another fantabulous Friday. Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. Look forward to the next program.